Welcome everyone to Firstpost America. I'm Eric Ham, coming to you live from our studios here in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. A busy start to the week with many stories coming from the United States and around the world. But before we get to all of that, here's a look at the latest global headlines. European and African leaders gather in Angola for a summit aimed at deepening economic and security ties, with talks focused on trade, migration, and critical raw materials. Iran slams Israel over the killing of Hezbollah's military chief in a Beirut strike, calling it a flagrant violation of the 2024 ceasefire and a brutal breach of Lebanon's sovereignty on the ground. The EU says it will urge the United States to implement more of the transatlantic trade deal struck in July, including cutting steel tariffs during talks in Brussels with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. The Philippines President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. takes a swipe at his sister, suggesting that she's unwell after she accused him of using illegal drugs amid growing public anger in the country over government corruption. And Malaysia says it will block children under 16 years of age from signing up for social media accounts starting next year, tightening access over child safety concerns and following similar measures adopted in several other nations. We start with a major development in the U.S.-Ukraine push to end the war. Washington and Kyiv are now moving forward with a revised peace plan after agreeing that the earlier draft needed significant changes. Now, this comes after a full day of talks in Geneva on Sunday, where U.S., Ukrainian, and European officials issued a joint statement calling the discussions highly productive while acknowledging several major issues remain unresolved. Now, no specifics of the revised draft have in fact been released as of yet.
All right, we had a very good day today. I think we made a tremendous amount of progress, even from the last time I spoke to you, and I apologize for keeping you waiting, but there was more work to be done. You know, we began almost 3 weeks ago with a foundational document that we socialized and ran by both sides, and with input from both sides. It evolved. This is a living, breathing document. Every day with input, it changes. There were some that involved equities or the role of the EU or of NATO or so forth.
Now, on Monday, the Kremlin said it was not informed of the results of the talks, adding Moscow was aware that adjustments were in fact made to the U.S. plan it had previously welcomed. The Geneva talks come after U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was accused by a U.S. senator of passing on a plan drafted solely by Russia. Rubio, however, rejected that claim, insisting the plan was authored by the United States and offered a strong framework built on input from both Russia and Ukraine. Meanwhile, Vice President J.D. Vance said that the people criticizing the deal either misunderstand the framework or misstate the reality from the ground. Now, the earlier 28-point draft had already drawn heavy criticism from European nations as well as U.S. lawmakers, and it required Ukraine to cede territory, accept limits on its military, and drop its NATO ambitions, terms widely seen as tilting far towards Moscow. European nations said they were not involved in the first draft, but have now submitted a counter-proposal that pushes back against territorial concessions and supports a stronger Ukrainian military.
The task now is to use the 28-point plan presented by the U.S. government as a basis for drafting a document that is acceptable to all parties, which will be presented by Ukraine, accepted, and used in negotiations with Russia.
While respecting and acknowledging the efforts made by the U.S. administration, I believe that this plan, this peace proposal, needs to be thoroughly reviewed, above all so that Europeans and Ukrainians can feel represented and can build the just and lasting peace that Ukrainians logically deserve and need.
Strangely, after the proposal was revised, President Trump sharpened his criticism, saying Ukraine had shown zero gratitude for Washington's efforts. And later, Zelensky publicly thanked the United States, saying American support, starting with Javelin missiles, saved Ukrainian lives. He also said it matters that the Trump team is hearing us and expressed gratitude to Europe, the G7, and the G20.
Tomorrow is also a busy day. We are defending the interests of Ukraine, where the strength of our position, the strength of our state-centric position, of the people's Ukrainian position is that it is our common position. The unity of Ukrainians in the defense of their national interests and of our independence and our sovereignty.
Now, although Kyiv has not issued a formal statement on the updated draft, the White House says Ukrainian officials believe the revised document meets their security needs. And on Monday, Zelensky said Ukraine had taken important steps with the U.S. in Geneva, but stressed that to achieve real peace, more is needed. As talks intensify, fighting on the ground and in the air intensifies as well, with no pause in hostilities. And Ukraine says civilian areas have been hit, but Moscow, however, denies this, saying its operations target only military and energy infrastructure. Now, the shape of a possible peace deal is changing rather quickly, but still faces major hurdles. More rounds of talks are expected, however, throughout the week. We'll keep you updated on those stories and others from Geneva. And now to South America, where tensions between the United States and Venezuela are intensifying. Washington is preparing what officials describe as a new phase of operations targeting President Nicolas Maduro's government. Over the weekend, a wave of flight cancellations highlighted the deepening uncertainty. The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration warned of a potentially hazardous situation in Venezuelan airspace due to heightened military activity, urging airlines to exercise caution. Eventually, Brazil's GAL, Colombia's Avianca, TAP Air Portugal, and Spain's Iberia quickly suspended services from Caracas. TAP said safety conditions were not guaranteed, while Colombian aviation authorities cited potential risk around Miquita Airport. Some carriers, including Copa and Wingo, continue to operate, but schedules remain unpredictable. The FAA warning coincided with reports from 4 U.S. officials that Washington is in fact preparing to expand its Venezuela-related operations in the coming days. Now, while the timing and scope remain unclear, officials said covert activity is expected to form the initial phase. And all 4 spoke anonymously, stressing the sensitivity of impending U.S. action. And the Pentagon referred inquiries to the White House, and the CIA declined, however, to comment. Senior administration figures have not ruled out any options, with one official saying President Trump was prepared to use every element of American power to combat what Washington alleges is Maduro's involvement in drug trafficking, accusations the Venezuelan leader has repeatedly denied. Now, U.S. officials have also said that plans under discussion have included the possibility of attempting to actually overthrow Maduro. And as evidence, the USS Gerald R. Ford, the U.S. Navy's largest aircraft carrier, arrived in the Caribbean on November 16th with its strike group joining at least 8 warships, a nuclear submarine, as well as F-35 jets.
You suggested you've made a decision about what you want to do next to Venezuela. I understand you don't want to tip your hand, but is there anything you're ready to rule out at this point? Are you ruling out U.S. troops on the ground?
No,
U.S. troops on the ground?
No, I don't rule out that. I don't rule out anything. We just have to take care of Venezuela. They dumped hundreds of thousands of people into our country from prison, but what they've done to this country, and I really say this, what Biden and the Democrats have done to this country can never, ever be forgotten.
Now, since September, U.S. forces have carried out at least 21 strikes on suspected drug boats in the Caribbean and Pacific, killing more than 80 people, actions condemned by human rights groups as unlawful extrajudicial killings. Washington is also preparing to designate the Cartel de los Soles as a foreign terrorist organization for its alleged role in drug trafficking. Now, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the move brings a whole bunch of new options for the United States. And President Trump, on the other hand, has indicated the designation could enable strikes on assets and infrastructure tied to Maduro, though has also left the room open for potential diplomatic talks.
And we may be having some discussions with Maduro, and we'll see how that turns out. They would like to talk.
Now, inside Venezuela, the mood is tense as communes held their fourth popular consultation of the year. Voters in Caracas continued casting ballots even as reports of U.S. preparations continued to spread. Clearly, Washington is gearing up for war, and right now it appears nothing can stop President Trump from the fight, even if questions about the legality of U.S. actions abound. And here in the nation's capital, demonstrators filled the streets demanding the impeachment, conviction, and removal of President Donald Trump from office. The protest, branded Remove the Regime, was organized by the grassroots network Removal Coalition. The event brought together political leaders, longtime activists, young organizers, and artists who urged Congress to act decisively. Performances by musical groups electrified the crowd before marches set off through Washington's central area. The organizers launched the campaign on Thursday with a rally followed by what they described as a record-breaking direct lobbying effort aimed at persuading lawmakers to support the impeachment. The crowds grew through the day, waving signs, chanting through megaphones, and calling for a political reset at the highest levels of government. The protesters dressed up as characters from Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale and held up banners reading "Predators out of D.C."
This is our watch. We cannot wait until some other time, hoping that things will get better in the meantime. No, things are not getting better. Things are getting worse. We must convict. We must impeach. We must have him removed, and we want him removed to make him an example for any future authoritarian who believes that he can take control of the government of the United States of America.
The latest demonstration comes as the year continues to be defined by record-breaking protest activity across the United States. In fact, just last month, more than 7 million people participated in the No Kings protests as the government shutdown dragged on. Those demonstrations voiced fears that the Trump administration was steering the country toward authoritarian tendencies. And on November 15th, protesters gathered outside the White House, peacefully wrapping the perimeter in a crime scene tape to symbolically condemn the administration's actions. Earlier, crowds filled the National Mall for a Trump Must Go Now rally, marking the one-year anniversary of the president's re-election.
This is the beginning of the fall of his regime, and the winter months are coming and we need to build that momentum, that push. We had a great day yesterday, so today it's a celebration, but, we have more work to do, so we're out here, get to D.C., we got to D.C.
Beyond impeachment calls, demonstrators have also pushed back against President Trump's decision to deploy National Guard and intensify ICE operations across several Democratic-led states. In cities like Chicago, clashes between protesters and authorities have escalated as tear gas, less lethal rounds, and flashbang grenades have been used to disperse crowds. And the unrest has not been confined to just Washington. In fact, in the UK, during Trump's early September visit, activists projected an image of the U.S. president with Jeffrey Epstein onto Windsor Castle. In South Korea, anti-Trump demonstrators staged performances lying motionless on grass to symbolize the harm of capitalism while criticizing his trade agenda. And so as Washington's latest protest disperses, one thing is certainly clear. This is not an isolated moment, but part of a sustained growing movement. And whether it shifts the political landscape or intensifies the national divide remains to be seen. But for now, the voices demanding accountability are only getting louder. Last week, Washington prepared for an Oval Office confrontation, the kind that produces split-screen chaos and rival statements within the hour. President Donald Trump and New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani were supposed to enter as sworn political enemies and leave with fresh ammunition, both for themselves as well as their respective political bases. But when the cameras turned on, the script completely collapsed. The tension didn't spike, in fact, dissolved. And the exchanges weren't hostile, they were strangely, oddly warm and fuzzy. President Donald Trump and Mamdani completely flipped the script dramatically, and it may change what comes next. Here's our story with more.
No one expected this.
Congratulations, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Not from Donald Trump, and definitely not with Zohran Mamdani. For months, the storyline was simple.
He's going to change also. We all change. I changed a lot.
These two men were political fire and oil.
My friends, we have toppled a political dynasty.
Mamdani called Trump authoritarian.
If he is a communist, you know that.
And Trump fired back with labels like 100% communist lunatic and total nutjob.
So Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up.
If you want to see what congressional Democrats wish to do to America, just look at the result of yesterday's election in New York, where their party installed a communist as the mayor of the largest city in the nation.
Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about...
That's okay. You can just say yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Their feud had become a reliable fixture of American political theater. So when the mayor-elect of New York City walked into the Oval Office on Friday, the world braced for sparks. But the sparks never came.
Really good, very productive meeting.
Something far stranger did, because instead of confrontation, we got warmth. Instead of barbs, we got praise.
And he beat him easily, and I congratulated him.
And instead of two rivals locking horns, we got two New Yorkers bonding over affordability, Queens, and the future of their hometown. It felt unreal. And for Trump, it was downright rare. From the moment the cameras rolled, the tone shifted. Mamdani stood to Trump's right, his hands clasped and his posture composed. Trump leaned back in his chair, surprisingly relaxed. No icy stares, no jabs. Just two men projecting something dangerously close to camaraderie. Trump did not just avoid attacking Mamdani, he admired him.
And I can tell you some of my views have changed. And we had discussions on some things. I'm not going to discuss what they were, but that I feel very confident that he can do a very good job. I think he is going to surprise some conservative people, actually.
That sentence would have sounded like satire just months earlier. But Trump praised Mamdani again and again, calling him a potentially really great mayor, saying he was confident he can do a very good job. This wasn't normal. Trump is not known for melting towards critics, especially ones who openly call him a fascist. But even when the press pushed, Trump turned the moment into a joke.
And I want to clarify your answer to Stephen Nelson. He asked about your comment calling the president a fascist, and your answer was, both President Trump and I have been clear about our positions and our views. Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about...
That's okay. You can just say yes.
Okay.
Okay. It's easier. It's easier than explaining it. I don't mind.
It was playful, almost affectionate. A tone Trump rarely adopts with rivals, let alone democratic socialists from New York. Both men understood the stakes. The affordability crisis is swallowing voter patience, and each of them needs progress and fast. Their meeting wasn't about scoring points, it was about survival. And maybe, for a moment, about nostalgia. Two men from Queens, two men who believe the city is at a turning point, and two men who somehow found common ground. Mamdani pointed out that in the presidential election, more New Yorkers cast their ballots for Trump, and he framed it not as a fluke, but as a response to the president's messaging on affordability. And while the meeting was still making headlines, social media found a new obsession: Trump's winter outfit. Within hours, a photo of Mamdani, doctored to match Trump's bold red and black look, began circulating online. Memes erupted. Some joked that Trump was copying Mamdani's style after their buddy moment. It wasn't true, of course, but the internet did not care, because the idea fit the mood. Trump praising Mamdani, Trump joking with Mamdani, Trump maybe even dressing like Mamdani. Two men entered the Oval Office expecting to clash. Instead, they walked out rewriting expectations. Politics doesn't often deliver surprises anymore, but this one sure did.
And finally, we shift to a very different kind of storm, one centered not on policy or power, but on the Second Lady, Usha Vance. Over the weekend, her team moved quickly, insisting she forgets her ring sometimes, but that assurance came only after a single missing accessory triggered a full-blown political frenzy. Photos of the Second Lady at Camp Lejeune without her wedding band spread rapidly across social media, igniting rumors about trouble at home. The moment struck a familiar nerve. Her marriage to Vice President J.D. Vance has been under massive scrutiny over the course of this year. From his viral embrace of Erica Kirk to MAGA commentators labeling Usha a liability to the recent controversy over Vance publicly expressing hope she converts to Christianity. Now the missing ring has added a new chapter to that relentless spotlight. Our final story takes you inside Trouble in Paradise.
Usha Vance did not expect a simple photograph to set off a firestorm. But one image changed the tone of her week. On November 19th, she stood at Camp Lejeune beside First Lady Melania Trump. The cameras zoomed in. Her left hand was bare, no wedding ring. And within minutes, the pictures spread across social media. Speculation erupted. Whispers of marital strain resurfaced. Memes about J.D. Vance sleeping on the couch filled timelines. Her team moved quickly to calm the noise. A spokesperson said Usha often removes her ring during daily chores. She is a mother of 3. She washes dishes. She gives baths. She sometimes forgets to put the ring back on. The clarification arrived, but the conversation had already widened. Because this was not the first controversy involving the couple, the scrutiny began weeks earlier. It started with a Turning Point USA event in Mississippi. Erica Kirk, the widow of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, introduced J.D. Vance on stage. She spoke warmly about him. She said she saw similarities between Vance and her late husband. The crowd applauded as she hugged the vice president. The moment went viral. Screenshots and slowed-down clips flooded social media. That clip fed into another narrative. Some MAGA commentators had been targeting Usha for months. They called her a liability. They pointed to her Hindu upbringing. They argued her background did not fit the movement's message. Her presence became a talking point in certain circles. Then came the moment that intensified everything. In the same Turning Point USA event, Vance was asked about faith. He spoke about their interfaith marriage. He said he hoped his wife might one day embrace Christianity.
Now, most Sundays, Usha will come with me to church. As I've told her, and I've said publicly, and I'll say now in front of 10,000 of my closest friends, do I hope eventually that she is somehow moved by the same thing that I was moved in by church? Yeah, I honestly do wish that, because I believe in the Christian gospel, and I hope eventually my wife comes to see it the same way.
His comments triggered strong reactions. Social media users said the comments echoed long histories of conversion pressure. Some South Asians said the wording felt dismissive of Hindu identity. Vance later responded on X. He said Usha had supported him through his journey. He said she had no plans to convert. He said he would continue to love and support her regardless. Even Usha had spoken about their home months earlier. Back in June, she said she was not planning to convert. She said their children could choose their religious path. She said they also learn Hindu traditions through her family.
The kids know that I'm not Catholic. They have access to the Hindu tradition from books we give them, and from our trip to India and its religious elements.
The couple met at Yale Law School and married in 2014. They now raise 3 young children, but their private life has become a public storyline. A missing ring, a viral embrace, a debate over faith. Each episode leads into the next, and as the spotlight grows sharper, what moment will spark the next chapter in this unfolding saga?
That's going to do it for us today. We certainly thank all of you for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks everyone for watching.